Welcome to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast, where we are always on the level. I'm your host, Brother Samuel.
And I'm your co-host, Brother Gabriel. Craftsmen, it's always been our motto here that we're always on the level. And in this fraternity, we are all always on the level. All brothers are the same to all brothers. But that doesn't mean that we're not unique, that we don't have our own thoughts and our own feelings and our own ways that we love this fraternity. And one of the joys that we all take in showing that is by how we like to present a little bit of our own individual personality into our display of our love of the fraternity. So you'll see many different people wanting to display different organizational lapel pins, or years they were master as lapel pins, or really unique ties. A lot of Masons like to wear square and compass ties. We've all seen that. And there are many, many different square and compass ties. But there's also something that has a large amount of variety, and something that each Mason can assign their own value to and their own love to, and their own way that it represents their personality in the craft. And that is our Masonic rings. Our Masonic rings have a lot of purpose to each and every Mason.
I love that thought, Brother Gabriel. I mean, you are absolutely right. But first, maybe we should talk to the craftsman about maybe what a Masonic ring is and what it isn't, and what its connection is to the fraternity as a whole. So a ring in general is a never-ending circle. It's a forever promise, a bond, much like our obligations as Masons. It's supposed to be a constant reminder worn on your body to remind you of the obligation that you took, remind you of your ties to the fraternity, and remind you of the man that you should try to emulate and be. But it's not a Masonic symbol. It's not taught to us in the fraternity. It's not part of the rituals. It's a added piece.
It's something that we've chosen to use to represent our thoughts and feelings on the fraternity.
Sure, and it's also another way that you can tell another Mason in the darkness as well as in the light. And, you know, we have our secret ways of knowing each other, and you by all means should not take seeing a Masonic ring at face value. Should absolutely make sure that that guy is a member of a lodge and is able to pass the tests, we'll say. But it's usually a good indicator seeing it, kind of like seeing a Masonic hat. You know, it's a conversation starter.
I've seen many a Masonic hat or Masonic ring at county fairs, or in my travels in the military or in the professional world, and it very often leads into conversations of, oh, I see that you're a traveling man.
Exactly. That's exactly how it starts. I had a guy, when I was in college, see my ring, say that exact phrase to me, and I kind of stared at him because I was new and I didn't understand what he was asking me. And I went, oh, because he kept pointing at my ring, and we talked for a little bit. We, shook hands, and we were best buddies after that. I mean, I think I was sick one day, and I think he took notes for that whole lecture for me and gave them to me. And
just as a brother should.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I found out we got to talking. He was a new member of Prince Hall at the time, which was really cool. So, we were both kind of starting Masonry in our early 20s, and, we were both super excited about it. So we've talked about how, the Masonic ring is not a emblem of our fraternity, but it is most certainly probably a very prevalent symbol of our fraternity. I think it's probably the most common thing you'd see out and about.
It's not a written regulation symbol of the fraternity in the fraternity, but it is a very common example of seeing the fraternity in the outside world is how I would consider that.
I'd agree with that.
Because the Masonic ring is something you can wear 24/7. I mean, in my profession, I don't wear my good wedding ring or my good Masonic ring because I'm always working with my hands. I wear silicone rings for working, but in a more professional setting, interviews or any suit and tie affair or dinner, I'll wear my Masonic ring. And I've spotted a couple in my travels before at random weddings or funerals or any sort of event, anything that you can go to in your life. You can see someone somewhere with a Masonic ring.
See, it's funny you say that. I actually have a white line on my ring finger because I only take this off to go to bed. I put it on, it's the first thing I do in the morning, and if I go to work without it on, I feel absolutely naked.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's going to be a weird day, and I feel for it, and it's not there.
When I come to lodge is when I wear my rings because, like I said, in my profession, I can't. And if I don't have my ring on at lodge, I feel the same. I feel very naked without it.
And it's not something you have to do. We know plenty of brothers that don't wear Masonic rings. They choose not to wear one. Typically not for some, theological reason, but, Brother Staler doesn't like wearing rings.
Mm-hmm.
It's not his thing. So he actually has a pendant that he wears occasionally. So, and you don't wear your ring while you're at work, but I'm sure sometimes you wear your hat.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll have something on like that, they can still tell who you are. And I think everybody that knows you already knows you're a Mason.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think we should also probably talk about maybe why there's some rules when it comes to wearing Masonic rings. And maybe maybe not rules, but
Etiquette.
And there's a couple of philosophies when it comes down to wearing a Masonic ring.
Mm-hmm. And it can all be up to interpretation, too. Like we said, there's no set, chiseled in stone rule. There's guidelines and a philosophical stance and common etiquette that should, in most instances, be observed. But it's not a regulation, per se.
Sure. And I think that first one is that at least here in Ohio, you're typically not supposed to wear a Masonic ring until you are a full-fledged Master Mason.
Correct. I don't know how that is in other jurisdictions, though. I have very rarely traveled for Masonic duties outside of the state, and when I did, it was long after I had been a Master Mason already, so I don't know how that is in other jurisdictions.
But that's at least how it is here.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's two trains of thought when it comes to wearing a Masonic ring, and it's actually really funny because you and I both differ on our opinions of how this is supposed to go. So my question to you, Brother Gabriel, is when you wear your Masonic ring, do you wear it with the points of the compasses facing out or facing in?
Typically, I wear my Masonic rings with the compass facing out because especially because of how I place my hands when I'm talking or when I'm conversing with people, it can be seen in the way that it is. And this goes into the first aspect of this philosophy that we are talking about, is that when I wear my rings, I like to demonstrate that I am a Mason, that I take pride in being a Mason, that I take pride in living my life, attempting to live my life by the morals and virtues instructed to me by the fraternity. And I like to be perceived as someone who exemplifies those characteristics, not in a chest-thumping bravado kind of way, not in a, oh, I'm a better Mason than you kind of thing. That's the antithesis of Masonic teachings. There are plenty of Masons who do better things than I do, that don't make as many mistakes as I do. But that gets into the long-reaching philosophical aspects of Freemasonry, but I wear my ring out. So basically, it boils down to I like to be seen as a Mason. I like to be someone who can be pointed to and said, that's a Mason. That's a man of good quality, good standing. He's a friend. He'll help you with things. He's a good man. And to me personally, the compass facing out is a statement of that, is a statement of my love of the fraternity.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's pretty much the philosophy that I was told exactly verbatim by Brother Christopher Gorsuch on why you would wear one facing outwards, because he too wore his with the points facing outwards, because he wanted everyone to know that he was a Mason and that he was proud of it and that he exemplified those thoughts, that those feelings. Me personally, though, I take the opposite approach. I wear mine with the points facing towards me because I have some problems when it comes to sometimes my mouth, sometimes my thought process, and sometimes I have a short temper, especially when I'm very, very frustrated and overworked. And sometimes I need that constant reminder that I can look down on my hand and I see the symbols and our working tools, and I constantly have to remind myself, you're a Mason, do better. And that's why I keep mine facing towards me. It's just a constant reminder of our values. I think people that know me know that I'm a Mason. I think they figure it out. But my ring is a personal piece for me. It's a personal reminder for me, and it follows that symbology we talked about in the beginning. It's a constant promise, a promise to follow those ideals. And sometimes we don't always, we falter. There's no perfect man. But it's always nice when I'm very frustrated at work, especially how it's been lately. I can look down on my hand and go, you're better than this. You're better than getting mad and getting angry and, being frustrated. Don't be short with these people. Be nice to everyone you see. Smile. Be respectful. It's not their fault. It's no one's fault. You're better than this. And that's why I wear mine with the points facing towards me.
And I really love that. That's really noble. I've always respected brothers like yourself who are able to do that, because for me, I've always had a little bit of trouble with some introspection sometimes with the looking in. And I find it very, very noble of you to be constantly thinking of that. And it just goes to show how different interpretations of the values of Freemasonry are, is that a lot of brothers use it for introspection, looking into oneself, and a lot of brothers use it for showing others how good of people they are. And it's wonderful. It's so nice that brothers can be in the same universe and exist in the same lodges and have similar rings, but have such different but noble purposes behind it.
And there's no right or wrong answer to that question. I know when I first joined, I think I asked 10 or 15 different brothers what I was supposed to do. Every one of them gave me a different by-law edict. This is how you have to wear it. And none of them were the same. And I just remember I went and talked to Chris. I'm like, how am I supposed to wear this thing? My first night as a Master Mason. He goes, do whatever you want. And then he went and started talking to me. He said, there's no right or wrong answer. Nobody's going to rip that thing off your finger because it's facing one way or the other. The real question is, do you want the world to know what you are, or do you need to remind yourself of what you are? And I've kind of gone by that ever since then. And I don't think the points facing towards me changes anything for me, because most of the time when somebody notices it, I'm working on them at work and they notice it before I even notice it. And they're like, oh, hey, you're a Mason. And I'm like, I am. I'm like, wait a minute. Well, first time your x-ray guy, but also yes. Oh, yeah, man. Is there anything else I can do for you? Can I go get you another blanket? Is there someone I can call for you? You know, it's never stopped me. But it is fascinating how there's different thought processes when it comes to these things. You know, our teachings and our ideas are not hard in stone. I mean, I think some of them are, but I think some of them are open to interpretation and symbology and how we use that symbology in Masonry to teach a lesson, an allegory or a story that has a meaning behind it. I think that's a good example of one way the fraternity does it. You know, in your case, you like showing people that you're a Mason. In my case, I have to remind myself that I'm a Mason. Neither one are wrong examples. Neither one of them are bad. It's fantastic to have a guy that's out there showing off that he's a Mason, especially somebody like you that's out in the public, works with people, has a high reputation. In my case, I have to constantly remind myself because I know I have limitations and I know I have things that I have to work on. And it just helps having that constant reminder for me.
Because it's different for every Mason. We're not all the same. We're all cut of different cloths, yet we've committed to joining this brotherhood together. And much like all kinds of different things of this fraternity, it exemplifies that. It makes it really important.
Well, and I'll tell you the interesting thing for me, at least that I've always found interesting. If you show me a man who is a Mason and you show me his Masonic ring, it will tell me so much about him. It will tell me what he values, what he doesn't value, the symbols in our fraternity that he really relates with. It's a talking point where I can ask him about it. And the fascinating thing is a lot of these guys, especially some of the more ornate rings that you see, have a story behind them.
Mm-hmm.
They are, I mean, some of them are very detailed, very beautiful. And when you ask them about it, a lot of times there's not only is there a, I think it's cool, but there's also a, this was my great-grandfather's. This was my grandfather's. This was my best friend's dad's. And there's a story behind that. Every ring has a story behind it. It's almost like the myth that you carry around with you. And then when you go and you pass from this earth, that story goes with you to whoever has your ring after you. And maybe you'll be buried with it. I mean, I'll probably be buried with mine. But if it goes on to somebody else, they're carrying along my legacy going forward.
Which happens to a lot of us. A lot of us have Masonic memorabilia stories or Masonic heirloom stories, which I think will be a good topic for another episode, an entire episode dedicated to just heirloom stories.
Oh, I agree. And speaking of, I mean, and that's just talking about the older rings. A lot of times now, a lot of the younger guys are going with a more, let's say custom. Custom might be the right word to use. There's a lot more options out there now than there used to be back in the day. I mean, there's Masonic ring sites everywhere. I get them on Facebook. I'm sure you do too.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, usually they're junk. But every once in a while you find one and you're just like, that's me. That is absolutely me. And I got to have that. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just tell you a couple stories about some of the rings that I have. I actually have a very large collection of Masonic rings. But believe it or not, I only wear 2 of them. And there's a really important reason for that. My great-grandfather, that we've talked about a couple times on this show, and my grandfather were both Masons. I have both of their rings. My great-grandfather's is beautiful. I mean, solid gold, ornate, It's got the pillars, it's got the square, it's got the compass, it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful piece of art.
It probably cost a fortune. And it's one of those fascinating questions I've had because I wish I could ask him, why did you pick this one? There's a reason behind it. Did you just think it looked cool, or did you like the symbology in it? Because there's a lot of symbology in it for such a tiny little square. And I also have my grandfather's ring. His is just a basic gold ring with the square and compass on it. That's it. And my grandfather was a very simple man. I mean, he went to work, came home, no frills, no muss. I think he went to lodge 3 or 4 times his whole life. So, and I think he joined because great grandpa was a member and he got him to join. I also have Brother Christopher Gorsuch's pinky ring. That was his dad's, I believe. Chris never had a son, so when he passed away a couple of years ago, the family gifted it to me, and I have kept it in my collection ever since. And there's a reason why I don't wear these rings. To me, they're not mine. They are relics. They are almost like
they're almost a memorial.
Yes.
To your family and your friends who have come before.
And that's how I have them presented. People can come up and ask about that. And I have Chris's ring has got his Bible next to it, one of his Bibles, not his Masonic Bible, but one of his Bibles. And got that sitting on there. And my grandfather's belt buckle collection, I have that sitting with it, and his Masonic Bible. So it almost feels like imposter syndrome when I wear them. Like they're not for me.
And that's not to say that people who wear family heirloom rings are impostering someone. No, they are continuing a legacy. Correct. This is just your personal opinion.
Just absolutely me. And I do wear them on occasion, especially when it's a fancy night like inspection or Grand Lodge or something like that. I feel like I'm taking them with me somewhere almost. But I don't wear them in my everyday life. Another ring that I have, I actually purchased with Brother Cashin and Brother Staler when we went to Gettysburg and visited Gettysburg Lodge, as well as the Brother to Brother Memorial. There's a little jewelry shop in downtown Gettysburg, and we walked in and we're just, kind of browsing. We went into every business, and I happened to look into this case, and me and Dustin were both looking. There's this beautiful silver Masonic ring, but it's not like anything I've ever seen. It's very old school, and I mean very old school. The square and compasses almost look like thin lines placed on top of just a basic cigar type band. I mean, it's very basic, and there's just something beautiful about it that caught both of our eyes. And we were like, yeah, we think we're going to buy these. They weren't very much. They were about $150. And the lady behind the counter said, I'd love to sell them to you, but you have to go talk to that guy. And we turned around and their security guard was standing in the corner. And I walked over and he shook my hand and we talked for a little bit. And he looked over at the jeweler and nodded his head. And we walked over and she said, I'm happy to sell it to you. The owner is very, very particular about selling these rings because they are a copied mold cast of her grandfather's Civil War ring.
Wow.
So she is very particular about not selling them to people that are not Masons. And they were lucky that their security guard is a Mason. So you had to check with him before anybody would sell that ring to you.
Sounds like we're going to Gettysburg for my birthday. I'm buying one of those rings.
It's pretty cool. It's very nice. I don't wear it all the time because it's silver. It's very delicate. But I think it's just a beautiful piece of history. I feel like it's just very simple. It's very me. It's very, very when I want to get dressed up.
Mm-hmm.
But the other main thing that my main Masonic ring is a basic titanium circle ring with a brass square and compass on the top. It's very simple. Once again, the titanium's indestructible. It's aircraft grade titanium, and that brass top, I mean, I think the square and compass pops. But like I said, it's very easy for me to look down and see that square and compass and remind myself. And this ring has actually saved me from losing my finger in a couple of jobs because it's so strong. It took the brunt of whatever landed on my hand. So
Nice.
But I always find it interesting, at least for me, that if you look at a Mason's ring, it tells you so much about them and what they value. It's almost, in my head, it's almost like a Jedi's lightsaber, the most custom thing on a Jedi. They all wear the same robes. They wear the same hair for the most part. They all do the same job. But at the end of the day, every one of their lightsabers was unique, and it says so much about them.
That's a nice little tie-in right there.
Well, I am a Star Wars nerd. So how about you, Brother Gabriel? What stories do you have?
Well, I have a story that's going to take us back a little bit to our DeMolay days.
Sure.
And I think that was when you and I first really became aware of Masonic rings because we had seen them on the Dad Advisors, and DeMolay has its own ring
Sure.
as well. It has the Chevalier ring.
And the Legion of Honor.
And the Legion of Honor, yes. But that's generally for senior DeMolays and Mason members who serve the Order of DeMolay in an adult leadership role.
And we'll talk about those a little bit later in detail.
Absolutely. So when I became a Chevalier, generally what you do is you would purchase your Chevalier ring. And for those of you who don't know, the Chevalier ring has a engraving of Jacques de Molay, the patron of the Knights of DeMolay, on it. And it's a gold ring, and generally the engraving of Jacques de Molay is also gold, matching the ring as well, but it's an oval set that pops on top, really nice, a lot like your ring that you wear.
Actually, the Chevalier ring is a signet ring. It's actually made to be able to press into wax seals and seal envelopes.
I like that. I really like that. But when I became a Chevalier, I didn't have a lot of money. I wasn't able to purchase my own ring, and my mother found out about this, and she ordered me one, but not one of the regular DeMolay ones. She ordered me a custom Persian black stone Chevalier ring.
Wow.
And that was my ring for the longest time. I wore it for the last couple of years that I was in DeMolay, and I wore it for the first several years as a Master Mason as well, because to me, that was me. That was me showing how appreciative I was of my DeMolay days and how much being a Chevalier meant to me.
So, question. So typically the Chevaliers wear their ring on their left hand, on their wedding ring. Is that where you wore that custom ring?
No, because it was a surprise. It wasn't milled to my hand exactly. So I tended to wear it on my right hand where it would fit. And I always told myself that I would go back and maybe have it altered, changed to fit on a different finger. But it became comfortable where it sat. And just because the standard was to wear it on the left, especially because it was a custom ring, it was okay to wear it wherever it felt comfortable.
Well, and now, technically, as senior DeMolays, I believe we're supposed to wear it on our right hand.
I would have to check the regulations on that. But
too. I think, I remember, you replace the Chevalier ring with your wedding ring. Now you wear your Chevalier ring, you're wearing it on your right hand. I'm unmarried, so I technically can wear mine on my left hand still, technically.
Yeah, this goes into all of the etiquette we were talking about earlier.
And certain
Masonic rings.
Certain rings have their own rules to it when there are awards or something like that. And some of them we can only speculate on because we are not active members of those organizations. I know that the Scottish Rite has their own ring for a couple of their degrees. They have their 14th degree ring, which is just kind of a gold band, and it has a symbol on the top of it for that degree. And we can't really go into that because it's, Masonic teachings. But it's a very pretty one, and I think you're supposed to wear that on top of one of your other rings. I'm not sure. I never got that one. But they also have the 33rd degree, which is the honorary degree that cannot be, you can't earn this. This is gifted to you by your brethren. And that is just the same gold band with the 33 on top of it. And you actually replace your 14th degree ring with that ring if you receive it, which is pretty cool. I mean, they all have their own etiquettes. I think the Legion of Honor ring is supposed to be a pinky ring, technically. So, but I know you wear another Masonic ring now.
I actually retired my Chevalier ring when my father was made a Master Mason. When he was made a Master Mason, he got a matching ring set. He bought himself a matching ring set, and he gave me one of the rings. And so now my father and I both wear the same ring. And he actually bought it because he liked it, but because he knew that it was partially my style, because I like silver rings. I'm not a fan of gold. I don't wear gold jewelry. I don't wear gold tie clips. Gold has just never been my color. And my wife knew that. We both have silver rings. We don't have gold. I have a very, very tiny gold band in my wedding ring, but my wedding ring is predominantly silver, and I like silver jewelry, and my father got silver rings with a silver square and compass, but with a very dark, almost black navy blue backing behind the silver square and compass, and it's flat, but it really pops. So it fits me almost perfectly because it's that silver, simple jewelry that I really like. It's not gaudy, it's not textured, it's very simple, but still, when I'm wearing it, you can still see the square and compass popping right away. And that's very much fits my personality with the ring.
Absolutely.
And it's just an honor to be wearing the same ring as my father.
And I mean, that's a story that you one day can pass on to your son. Hopefully one day you can either pass on or buy your own matching ring for Liam. And you'll all three have the same ring. Or maybe he'll have Grandpa's ring, or he'll have your ring. Who knows at that point?
That'd be a wonderful family legacy to have someday.
Absolutely. And you're starting your Masonic legacy with it. Another interesting ring that I've seen, I looked it up on YouTube yesterday. Did you know that Shaquille O'Neal is a Mason? He's a Prince Hall Mason.
Brother Shaquille O'Neal.
Brother Shaquille O'Neal. And he has probably one of the most stunning Masonic rings I have ever seen. It matches all of his other, his trophy rings. And it's got diamonds. It looks like a Super Bowl ring, and it's beautiful. And he's super proud of it. There's a segment of him talking, and somebody notes it on his hand, and they're like, "What is that?" And he's like, "Oh, that's the working tools of my profession." And he said it on national TV, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know you were a Mason." He's like, "Yeah, I'm a Mason." Like, And I think they were trying to embarrass him on it. I can only speculate, but he stood his ground. He was super proud of it, and I mean, it's huge. Big old square and compass, diamonds everywhere. And I think it says Freemason around it too. It's pretty sweet. But that's not you or me. Oh, yeah, we're looking at it right now. That's exactly what
It's awesome.
It's awesome for him. Like, that's him. If he wore something simple like what you and I wear, along with all of his, NBA trophy rings, it would get washed out. He needed something that matched the energy of everything.
Matched his personality.
Absolutely. And I love that for him, but I will never be able to have that, and that's not my styles. Respect to you, Brother O'Neill.
It's an amazing ring. It's one of the best rings I've ever seen.
But once again, it's just like a Jedi's lightsaber.
It's personal for the brother. If we all had the same ring, the same outlook, it wouldn't be unique. It wouldn't be special. It wouldn't be something that's so integral to a part of us.
I agree. And it's one of those things that once you start thinking about it and how unique every Mason is, why wouldn't they want to have a unique piece that shows who they are? And that's one of the things I love about Masonic rings.
So, Craftsman, we've shared a lot of our thoughts about this. And as we've kept saying this whole time, a lot of this is up to interpretation. But a lot of this is also symbolic of the craft. A lot of this is what you learn in your teachings, that this is a way that you can show your good morals, show your good character, show your individuality, yet also show your love for the fraternity. So take everything that we've been saying and really use it to improve how you think about the image that you want to portray for yourself in the fraternity. How when you think about how your brothers see you, you know that your brothers love you because we're in this fraternity together. We all love our brothers, but also think about how you can be an important, good, unique Mason in your craft.
Absolutely. And Craftsman, if you are a new Master Mason to the craft, or even a long-standing Master Mason in the craft, don't be afraid if you choose to wear a Masonic ring. Don't be afraid that you have to have something just like what everyone else has. You should wear something that reflects your personality and the true uniqueness that you bring to this fraternity and how much you love it. Going forward, we will be posting pictures of our Masonic rings, so that way you can see what we're talking about. You've heard our stories, why we chose these rings. We encourage you, if you feel comfortable, to post a picture of your own Masonic ring, and maybe a short story about why this ring is important to you and why you choose to wear it.
Thank you all for listening to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast. We will be posting pictures of our rings on our Facebook page, and we really hope to see yours as well.
Remember, Craftsman, keep your working tools in order and always be on the level. Thank you for listening.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, its officers, or any of its jurisdictions. Any and all opinions are those of the hosts.